Eh? Oh, you bastard! £3.5 up this morning.
Oh, come in, the girls just
Owned it. Welcome. Get up.
Hi, boys and girls, lads and lasses, and welcome back to Wednesday night's movies and TV reviews and discussion with myself and Archer Colin. Hi, Colin.
Hi there. Hi, folks. Hope you all had a good Christmas.
Yeah. Last stream of the year, because Saturday I'm going to put something together because obviously I'm going to be busy. Family meals and stuff like that.
Getting mildly inebriated for Hogmanay.
Yes, the Hogmanay watch, as it were. So, the Changeling. Did you manage to watch it?
No. This is going to be one of those streams. I couldn't actually get into it. I tried to watch it. I couldn't actually get into it. And Wendy, who suggested it, unfortunately can't be here. So it's going to be one of those short streams.
I've got a couple of notes from when she couldn't make it because of family commitments. Christmas, I can understand that because we've all been busy, and I've literally been busy. Lots of things happening. But so you couldn't get into it. So what did you find of the parts you watched?
Well, I mean, I saw the first bit, and it was very, very much 1970s.
Yes,
the first thing that struck me was it was quintessentially 70s.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Obviously, Sarah Kingdom obviously survived being aged long enough to get married to General Patton, and then get killed. But that's about. I thought that was quite interesting. I said I'm gonna just walk, and I just tried skipping the bits, and I don't know. Maybe I was just in the wrong frame of mind for something like that, for a slow build up. I spent last week binge watching Death in Paradise. Makes a bit of a difference.
Well, I binge watched Psych, and I hate the main character in Psych, but the peripheral characters are good. So I always skipped a bit where the main character was doing his stupid stuff. But
might pick up
other stuff I need to binge over the new year. So we'll see. But this one, I had never seen this movie before. And it's got some good actors in it. You know what I mean? You're talking about George C. Scott as the main character. And they've got a couple of side characters where you have Space 1999 mean Battlestar Galactica, where you had Barry Morse, who played Dr. Victor Bergman. Yeah. And then you had John Colicos.
Baltar and one of the Star Trek Klingons who
that's true, yeah. So you
played the same character, unfortunately, in the original series and was brought back in DS9. But they upgraded the makeup on him.
Yes, they did, because I remember he was in the one, was it Trouble with Troubles?
Yeah, I think so. One, two of those ones.
Yeah, I was in the Trouble with Troubles. I actually, the thing is, right, I found this story fairly dull and boring. But I think it was the runtime, because the characters were good. The kid actors were really good in it. I mean, they did stuff in this that they would never do. Like, well, it's a 1980s movie, so spoilers are out the door. There's going to be spoilers in this.
No, sure.
The ghost is a kid 70 years ago. He was drowned by his father, but they show him being drowned. But the dad goes in, he sits in, and he's in a bath, like the tin baths, and he grabs his feet and just holds him, so his head's under the water and he can't get up.
Wow.
And he struggles and bangs and stuff like that. And it was quite gruesome, but it was so well done that you're sitting there thinking they would never do that again, and you could not have a kid actor doing that. Obviously, they showed parts where it's just his hand and then the hand dropping down. So they show you a bit where he pulls his leg up and his head's under the water and he's splashing. Then it goes to things like his legs or his hands. So, you know, the kid's not underwater the whole time they're doing this drown scene. But it was well done. It was gruesome. I am not denying that watching a kid get murdered is not gruesome. But the kid actors in it, even the wee girl who... Right, the story is you've got John Russell starts off on a happy vacation with his wife and daughter, and he goes to phone because the car they were pushing the car, and a police car of all things comes round, causes a truck which is going too fast in the snow to veer off, hit their car, which kills his wife and daughter. So that's right at the beginning of the movie. So the fact is, it sets up happy marriage and devastation within the first couple of minutes.
Yeah.
The part drawn up to that where he's standing in the phone booth watching the truck, but it's almost as if he's jammed in the phone booth, and you're sitting there thinking, you could come out, even if you wouldn't be able to reach, you're just standing there watching it going, why didn't he push the thingy and either shout at them to get out of the way or try to run over to help them? But he just stood and watched. He saw the police car and you see him watching it, and you're sitting there thinking it was a wee bit drawn out, that part. But it initially sets the scene that he went from a happily married man to being devastated. So
I kind of got the idea from that bit, which I did see that it was almost as if he was frozen in shock, and he realised what was going to happen, and he just could not do anything about it. He was literally frozen, literally couldn't do anything about it.
It could have been, but it's just, I think because of when I was watching it the first time round, you're watching it for watching's sake. The second time round, it was a case of you're sitting there going, reviewing, you're being a bit more critical, and you're sitting there thinking he's doing that. But I think it was because after that part, they do the intro and the thing, but it's a walking for about 5 minutes, and you're sitting there thinking, dragging in as much. You know what I mean? It's just walk, and and that's the parts I think they could have cut a lot of that bit of things out. Are you still hearing me echoing?
No, I was echoing.
Sorry,
not anymore.
I didn't pick it up, so that's okay.
No, it's okay. I could hear myself.
Yeah,
presumably from yours, but it's okay now.
Right, no problem. But the thing is, there was things like that. So it starts off, and then the next thing you see after the big long walk, he's sitting talking to his two friends, having a smoke, which I found quite funny. He's sitting there, quite a lot, they're all smoking, but he's sitting having a smoke, talking to his friends and telling them how he just was like a zombie. Then he just had it in his head, they're gone. And he says, that's 4 months. So is that 4 months since he had the revelation that he realised they're gone? There's nothing he could do, they're gone. Or is that 4 months since the accident? But either way, he seemed to have got over it quickly. Because you don't have any time frame except that 4 month mentioned. So if that 4 months is mentioned from when his headspace was a case of they're gone, you need to get on with life, and it's been 4 months since that, or is it 4 months since the accident? And how long was that vegetative state where he was just walking around in shock? It just didn't give a time frame of how long ago it was, and he just seemed to be getting just going around normally. There was one part when they're later on when he meets this girl, this woman, and he seems to be almost, it's going to be a romantic relationship, and you're sitting there thinking, has it been that long? Has it got over that quickly? Then he goes out for a horse ride with her, and then he stops and you see him staring off into the sunset. And the woman says, you okay? And he says, my daughter used to love horses. and then it stops, and then it shows him waking up in the morning in tears. So it's got a juxtaposition. Where is this a relationship? Is it been over quickly? Was it only 4 months ago? And is he getting? Is he starting to fall for this other woman? And then he has these fits. It's almost like a juxtaposition where it goes. The acting from each of the characters, I didn't think there was one. It was a bit. I think there was one I thought was a wee bit weird, overacting, and that was the woman's mother. What was her name? So Claire Norman was the woman, and it was the one that played Mrs. Norman. Madeleine Sherwood played the mother, and she just seemed a bit, because she would be talking, then she'd be looking away and then walking away. Was she meant to be acting like sort of absent-minded, didn't pay attention to things, or was that just the way she was acting and it just seemed a bit off? Because she was only in it for a wee bit, you didn't get a feeling that was her character. She was like that. It was just almost a case of, it was quite jarring. She would be talking and going and then walking away, and you're sitting there thinking, what's happening? It just seemed a bit weird in places, and that's the part I just found that one person. But in the first watch through, I just thought, this is dragging in. The whole movie's dragging in. I found the characters compelling, but I wish they could cut about 15 minutes off it to make it tighter.
Yeah,
I think that's where the problem I had with it. It just seemed to. It was almost 2 hours runtime, wasn't it? I think it was
1 hour 47 minutes.
Aye, and they could have cut that down to under an hour and a half, and it would have been a lot better, I think. But I think they were trying to show of him, and that's where they were drawing out things where he was sitting, which I didn't know. He obviously looks as if he could play the piano, George C. Scott, because there was the bits where you see the hands underneath, and he's going, and the hands are going, but then there's bits they're showing, and he's sitting there playing wee bits of the tune on the piano, and you're sitting there thinking, does he actually play the piano? Because if he doesn't, somebody showed him how to do it, and it looks natural.
Well, I was like that for maybe he did learn. I don't know. I mean, I know. You didn't watch Wednesday, did you?
Wednesday, no.
Well, I know that Jenny Ortega, the actress, learned to play the cello for that role, and she played it. And the bits where she is playing, I'm not a great cello fan, but hey, Kelly.
Hi, Kelly. Oh, by the way, I was looking at our first stream of the new year, 2022, 8th of January, and the first 2 names that popped up in the chat is yours and Kelly's.
Grandma and Granddad of the stream. Grandma and Granddad were there.
Yep. So there was me, Jim, and Wend on it, and your 2 names were the first 2 that popped up in the chat. I was going, oh, there you go. Just goes to show.
I know. So what impressed me that was apparently Jenny Ortega actually learned to play for that, and but once she plays, she's sitting on the roof and she's actually playing Painted Black. She learned to play for that, and she studied just for that. So maybe George C. Scott did know something. What amazed me talking about that is when I found out that that Tom Ellis doesn't play the piano, because in Lucifer he plays the piano, he sings at the piano a lot, but he sings, but he can't actually play the piano. So I didn't know that, until it was meant, until he said it in one of the behind the scenes things, that actually he sits and he goes through the motions, but it's someone else's hands. Actually, when you actually see the hands actually playing the piano, it's someone else actually playing it.
That's quite a common thing, because we are aware of that type of thing. But it's just when I was watching it, initially you see his hands are just below and they're going through the motions, and you thought, oh well, it's the typical trope. They're implying that he's playing the piano, and then it shows you from around. He's not playing the full score. he's just playing parts of different tunes for different scenes, and it's him actually doing it. So it's not a long, it's a sort of a long shot where you see him, his hands actually going through the piano. And I thought that was a bit of a surprise, because I thought it was going to go down the route of never showing his hands playing the piano and him in the same shot. So, but
then again, if it's far enough away, you can't tell what he's doing, and maybe he's
but no, it was close enough.
And just piano music over it.
Yeah, exactly. So, but no, it was literally, it was close. It was close enough up that you could see. It was far enough away that you could see it was him standing over the piano. But it was close enough up you could see the keys he was playing in time for the tune that were going. But it could have been just a case of right, press it this, and somebody could have taught him that. But he does another one where he's sitting down in front of an audience, and the bit there, it's from a distance, looking down, and you see his hands, and he looks as if he's playing the piano. So yes, if he's actually just going through the stages of it, his hands look as if they're hitting the right keys in time to the music he's meant to be playing. So it just looked, I don't know if he can play the piano. I've not checked the trivia for that. It might be in the trivia, but there was some bits like that. But sometimes when he was playing the piano, he's just and then it doesn't go anywhere apart from the fact that he's a music teacher and he's doing that. So things like that could have been trimmed down a bit. And getting to the ghost story part of the movie, they built that up, but it's the same idea. There was long gaps in between it. So there was like, he's playing the piano and he goes, and one of the keys doesn't work. And then the door goes, so he goes up, and as he goes to answer the door, the key goes ding. The key wasn't working. And then there's other things that happen. There's a seance. The woman's doing the seance. If she was in doing a seance, you would think, she actually is a medium. She's actually real. Because she was just staring off in, just drawing, and the guy kept pulling the paper away, and she would just do that. And then occasionally she would ask a question, then she would answer. She would write something on it. But when she was asking the question, she was still drawing and just making marks on the page. The guy kept pulling them away. And when she would ask a question, she would write something and continue on. So in the way she was looking off into the distance, she looked as if she knew what she was doing, if you know what I mean. She looked real. And I think that's one thing I found about this movie that I enjoyed, was actually the characters' development. Something you don't see nowadays at all.
No.
These characters, even if they're only in for a couple of minutes, their character within that is quite set. So the Barry Morse is a parapsychologist, and he's telling him, well, we've got hundreds, but maybe one every 99% of them are fakes, but one occasional ones they seem to be, and you can see his passion just as he's explaining his job to John Russell, and you're sitting there thinking, he's only been in it for about 5 minutes, yet you see that he believes what he's doing. And it shows the character built up for somebody who's got a 5 minute. Even the Captain DeWitt, the John Colisco, I'm going to get his name
Colicos.
Colicos. It's right in front of me because I kept getting it wrong. But even he was only in it for a couple of minutes as well. And even his character, you knew he was a not quite corrupt cop, but he's a cop who's on somebody's payroll, and he's been asked as a favour to pressurize Russell to get that medallion back and stop blackmailing, because that's what he assumes. So he's basically helping an old friend. He might be on his payroll, he might be just doing it as a favour, but it wasn't a case of you saw him as a corrupt cop. You just saw him as a cop who was doing a favour for someone, and a politician. It's that type of thing. It wasn't a case of, it was a case of, give me it and don't blackmail him, or I'm going to get somebody to, we'll get the a warrant and get in here and find it. and get you into trouble because of that. And he just says, go ahead, do it. And then he dies in a car crash. But it's the build-up of things was good, but there was so many gaps in between. And that's the only fault I found of it. It was just too long. But like when Hurstable, she loves this movie because it's understated, which is, I had never heard of it, so it's very understated. People hadn't actually mentioned this before. I've never even heard it mentioned before. She says the mercurial qualities, and I would never have used that word because I don't know what it means. It starts off with a shock that instantly gives us the understanding of the main character's personal backstory, which it did. It basically showed he's happy and then taken away like that.
Yeah.
And the emotional mindset in one scene, which sets the tone for the rest of the movie. Which I think it does. And the only thing it failed in that was the bit with the smoking scene when he's talking to his two friends, because it didn't give you a better time frame. If they had actually says, yeah, I mean, I was walking about like a zombie for nearly a year, and then it just clicked that they're gone, they're not coming back, they're gone, and that was 4 months. In those 4 months, I've managed to get my life back together. But they didn't. They just mentioned the 4 months. They talked about what was happening, and they mentioned 4 months, and you don't know if it was from that date or that date. So it was a wee bit jarring, but it gave you the mindset for the rest of it. But because of that, it sort of jarred his mindset, because was it quick he got over it? Well, his mindset's no in turmoil. Then you have the crying scene, and then you think it is. Yeah, I mean, it was that part. And she does say, Gwen says about George C. Scott, and I must admit, I thought he nailed the character, the piano playing, the way he acts, sometimes the wee jumps and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, he's a well-known character actor. Look at Patton. Patton is, to me, is a character study of Patton because he plays him so well. It's not just a war movie. It is a character study of Patton. And you can see Patton, based on the interviews that I've seen or the documentaries I've seen of Patton, you can see him playing Patton. So he is a good character actor. And as she says, he puts in an amazing performance. And she finds it very believable and compelling, the role of grief-stricken widower. Apart from that one scene, as I said. Even though he's most remembered for Patton, the biopic, and he won an Academy Award for that. He's been in many major movies and in the theatre, and he's always stuck by his performance in Changeling, and he seems a far cry from other roles. And it does, I must admit, because it's a psychological one, I'd never even imagined George C. Scott was in this. Once I got told what the story was, and then I looked into it, and I thought, George C. Scott's in it, Barry Morse is in it. The three big names that I recognised, I thought, wow, I would never have put them in those type of movies.
So you've got three, at least three genre connections there.
Yeah,
you've got Space 1999.
Yeah,
you've got Battlestar Galactica, and you've got Doctor Who.
Yes,
got three genre connections there in one movie.
Doctor Who.
Jean Marsh.
Oh, so she was. I forgot she was in it. She was in Battlefield. She was in Battlefield.
She was in Battlefield, and she was also a descendant of Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart. That's my headcanon because that's why her brother looked exactly like Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart. Because her brother was Brett Viren, who was played by Nick Courtney before he became the Brigadier.
Yeah.
She was aged to death at the end of Dalek Master Plan, I think.
Aye, but that was the one. That was Patrick Troughton's story. Yeah.
No, I think it was I think it was William Hartnell one. It was really
because Patrick Troughton was when he Lethbridge Stewart come in, but I knew it was the one story. So it was William Hartnell was the one story Nicholas Courtney was in, because for the first seven Doctors he was in with he had appeared with every single
Yeah.
the 7 Doctors,
Mm.
and it was all a brigadier except that one.
Well,
And
because
William Hartnell, that's
the
what it
way
was.
the way they did it, if I remember right, they did one episode which was completely, which was the Nick Courtney episode. Didn't have the Doctor in it at all. Then I think they did another story. Then they went into the Daleks master plan, and which the first bit was first part of the Dalek master plan. If I remember right, that's the way they did it. Is that it was they did that. They did this complete, meanwhile off stage sort of thing, which wasn't off stage for once. But I don't think the Doctor and the TARDIS crew were in that one at all.
I can't remember. It's been a while.
Nah, it's been a very long time. But I said, that's why I've always said in my head canon, given that Virgin New Adventures brought in a great granddaughter of Lethbridge Stewart's, who, and this was that's come up the late 80s, early 90s. She is at least partially a descendant of colour, Kadiatu. So my headcanon is quite simply that basically Brett Ryan is a descendant of Brigadier Lethbridge because he's played by Nick Courtney, which explains the resemblance, and therefore by definition, since they are actually brother and sister, Sarah Kingdom is also a descendant of the Brigadier.
Right. It's just that I completely forgot. It's just when you mentioned that, Doctor Who, and I'm thinking, and then the battlefield just popped in my head.
Yeah.
She played Morgana.
Yeah.
I completely forgot about that. Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. You look at the character actors in this, and every single one of them, there was, apart from the one that played the mother, and I don't know if that's because that's what a character was meant to be like, sort of a disinterested in her daughter's career and what she does, because she would just sort of turn around and walk away and sort of head down reading stuff when people were talking. She would look up and go, "Yes, nice to meet you, Daisy," and then just. And she just seemed a wee bit absent, but I don't know if that was the actress or if that was the character. If it was the character, she did it so well that I couldn't tell.
Yeah.
But, and I think the characters made this movie. It's just a shame. I would love to do? Take this movie, put it into my editor, and clip out all those extraneous scenes just to see if it's actually more enjoyable. You know what I mean? Just the long walk part, cut that out so you just see a couple of wee bits where he's walking around a corner or along the road, and it just cuts it down from 5 minutes to about 30 seconds. And then the bit when he's sitting practicing the piano, just a couple of keys, just to give a wee hint that's what he was doing in the past, or else if it's no needed, completely take it out. And just to see.
There's some things like that. I mean, it's something that used to be, it's something storytelling and actually making it's something that used to be very, well done. It used to be properly done. I mean, I've been watching as he's suffering brain tumors from watching the Witcher Origins thing.
Yeah.
And there's apparently there seems to be absolutely nothing in the way of character development or anything like that at all.
See, the thing is, I can link this to things like Hartnell and Troughton's Doctor stories. They were, some people say rambling, but they were basically, they would set the scenes, even if sometimes I even thought the scenes sort of dragged on a wee bit too long, but because they were using it like from the theatre, because that's what they would do in the theatre, because they would have to give somebody else time to set up the next scene or get changed for the scene. So there would be sort of rambling parts where they would go on and they would walk across the scene and go, for about 2 minutes while they're giving their lines because somebody's trying to get across the street to come in that door, or else they need to get changed because it's, you see what I mean? I understand why they would do it, and it was still from the theatre. A lot of these things were done. So that you look at the doctors, the Doctor Who's, when they were being recorded, they were almost being recorded live because they wouldn't give them an option to do a second take. And that's why you get things like the crouton going, as it goes off the seat, you see it tipping, or William Hartnell, instead of he says something like soup instead of glove, and it makes slight mistakes. Or you see Barbara doing stuff.
That's
Kenny
George C. Scott's greatest role is Kenny Everett.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember Kenny doing all that. His chin. But
anybody to see that poster of Patton.
Yeah.
You know, where Patton's swan son.
I've got the DVD.
Yeah, I've got
so I have I enjoy it, but it is definitely a character study for Patton, and it's George C. Scott does it so well. But when she was saying that, she thinks the ending, without seeing any spoilers, is okay, but it seems to a bit distracted from the main character storyline and theme a bit. But otherwise, the movie is one of her all-time favourites for that genre.
I'm intrigued to know why a film about a ghost is called The Changeling, which is something different.
Yes, but that's the thing. That's the thing, right? So the story, right? You see it starting at the beginning, and then he moves into the house and he realizes it's haunted. He, through bits and pieces, you see he realizes that it's all about a 70-year-old. Well, this is set in the 80s, so, and it happened in 1909 or 1906. 1909, there was an accident, right, where the doctor and his wife had a boy and a girl, and the wee girl was outside, got knocked down by a coal horse and cart, and then she died 15 days later in the hospital. So she got knocked down outside. So they all think this is the ghost, right? Because it's reported she died and her son survived. And then they go to the graveyard, and there's the grave, the headstone for the mum, the dad, the son, and the daughter. Right? So they think it's the daughter, but when this medium, they bring a medium in to try and sort it out, and the medium gets in, the name is given as Josh, which is the boy's name. And they don't know what's happened. And it turns around the wee boy was a cripple, and he had his wheelchair, and he was up in the attic because they kept him out the way. And the father, his the will from his father, basically he didn't inherit anything. However, his son did the lot, and as long as his son on his 21st birthday would inherit the lot, up until that point the father was the executor who controlled it. He was the executor of the will. So, however, if the boy died before his 21st birthday, the money all went to charity. The wee boy's frail, crippled, and he's in the bath one day, and his dad walks in, grabs him by the heels, and turns him upside down and drowns him in this tin bath he was in. And then they went. There used to be a charity, an orphanage. He adopted a boy, and then went abroad with the boy.
Right.
The war started, which means he got stuck in Switzerland. So by the time the war finished and they got back, the boy was 18. Oh, and he was healthy. He wasn't crippled anymore. He was cured when he was in Switzerland.
Right.
So that boy took. So when the wee boy who was adopted taken on, he was given the boy's name, and all that. And the wee boy was buried in a well, dumped down a well.
Right.
And then they find they have an idea, and they manage to find the skeleton, and they find a thing. But the changeling isn't the ghost. The ghost is the wee boy who got murdered. The changeling was the old man who was the politician who the father had adopted and brought him up as if he was his own son.
Right,
Called him his son's name and told him that's the thing, mate. And it was a politician, even though he says, my dad was a good dad, and they kept saying to him, you must have known because you've been good to this charity, you've been good to this museum, you've been good to this, and you've been trying to keep people out of this house. So he's been feeling a bit guilty, but accordingly, he says he didn't know about it, and his dad was really good, and you stopped telling me my dad, and that's the changeling. Changeling was the old man who'd taken over from
I get that because that's my one and only claim to stage fame is I played the Changeling at school. Primary school, we did Midsummer Night's Dream, and I played the Changeling.
Oh, there you go. But
that's why I said that makes sense. Yes, but thank you. That explains why the film was called The Changeling.
Yeah. See, when I was when we were looking at a ghost story, when we were looking at a ghost story for the Christmas one, and then the Changeling was mentioned, the first thing I thought was, why is that a ghost story? Because a changeling is completely different. However, when you watch it, you realise it's called the Changeling because of the side character, not to do with the ghost or the main character. Yeah. The Changeling is the reason the ghost is unquiet.
Yeah. Mm.
So, but the story is a good story. I can't deny it is a good story. It's just a long and drawn out story. So it is. They could have cut it down to at least 15 minutes out of it, and it would have actually, the pace would have been a lot better. And I think that's the only thing it failed for me was the pace. The characters were great. The kids acting were great. So the wee girl at the beginning, when she's happily with her father and her mother, she didn't seem overly, hi, I'm a big, look at me, I'm happy type thing. She was just sort of messing around with her mum and her dad, which you would expect. So it seemed natural. The bit where the wee boy getting drowned and stuff like that, it was very jarring. It looked realistic. Unlike the CGI rubbish they would put in just now, they would be over the top, violent and stuff like that. This one looked jarring just because you just see the guy holding up the feet, the wee boy getting under the water and he's struggling, and then it shows you just bits where the dad's just holding the feet and they're struggling, and then you see other bits where the hands banging against the tin bath and it's making the noise that you heard earlier on when John Russell wakes up and hears banging and he wonders where it's coming from, and it's linking the drowning to the noises of the house and stuff like that. So that was very jarring. So it was well done with the wee boy getting drowned. It looked realistic. And then there was a bit where the body was dumped in a well. They'd built a house over the top of it. And then they went to talk to the woman who had the house. And she asked him, did you have a seance 3 days ago? And she says, he says, well, my daughter will not sleep in that better bedroom. She says, she started screaming, and she says at roughly about midnight, she heard a noise of water, and she looked, and there was a young boy coming through the floorboards. And she's so terrified. And then you see the wee girl. So you don't see the wee girl at this point. And then you see the wee girl lying in her mum's bed. Her mum's sleeping because she won't go into the room. She's sleeping with her mum. And she's just staring up to the ceiling, tears going down. And then you just see her. She stands up and walks in to her bedroom. She looks a bit stiff, but she's meant to be terrified. So you'd expect it. And then she just looks, and then it shows you the wee boy drowning again. And the wee girl just screaming and screaming and screaming until the mum comes in, and the mum's looking around because she can't see anything. Yeah. So the 3 kids that were in it, even though they were only in it for short times, they actually didn't ham up overact as you would see nowadays. You know what I mean? Right, you're meant to be scared, and it's, oh my God, and all this rubbish and stuff like that. You would see kids acting nowadays because they think overacting is the way kids act. They were actually very well done. The characters all in it were really good and convincing, but jarring because of the time frames around things happening. They could have narrowed it down.
Yeah.
It was a shame for that. I think if it was filmed just now, it wouldn't have been as good because they would have cut it down, but there would have been so much cut out of that. I saw for 2022, there's a movie being in production called The Changeling. I thought, are they remaking it? But it's not. The one for 2022 is a fantasy magic one. So
the thing is, I'm thinking that at 145, I mean, most films
are usually under about 120,
about 120, about up to an hour, 1.5, aren't they? Maybe 90 minutes.
Yeah. So I think it would have been better if it was tightened a wee bit for that. But that's the only fault I've got with it, was the drawn out parts in between the things happening. And I think you could have taken about 15 minutes out of the movie, and it would have actually tightened it up a lot more, and it would have made it a lot better. But I can't fault any of the characters. I can't fault the actual story, because it was quite an intriguing story. It wasn't a case of, oh, I'm being haunted and I have to do this. And it's actually because of an old man, and it's the old man who didn't do anything wrong. He was adopted out, and he was brought up as that kid. So the old man didn't do anything wrong. He just didn't believe his dad did something wrong. He just was adopted in and brought up as that boy who was his dad had murdered. So in effect, they didn't even actually tell you this guy is evil because of this. It's just a guy who was trying to protect his father's, because he didn't want to believe his father was that bad. So although he was quite stern and didn't want this to happen, he was also known as being generous to different charities and stuff like that. So you couldn't say the guy was an evil character, and the ghost had to get his comeuppance. It was just the ghost wanted revenge for being murdered because his father was greedy and didn't want to take the chance that the son. He didn't think the son would live till he was 21, so I just killed him and got another one. In effect, his dad was the evil one who murdered Duke for profit. But the guy who it was all about, the Changeling, you couldn't actually even say he was a bad man. At the end, the ghost gets his revenge because you see John Russell, the house is on fire, and then it shows, you see the guy walking up the stairs, getting into the room, and then the room explodes. And then you see the guy screaming, and he's actually had a heart attack because he hadn't left his house. Then when they drive from the burning house to his house, the ambulance is there. He'd had the heart attack and died. So what did he see? Did he see his image or his soul going up that stair? Yeah, I mean, so
interesting.
It was a good. I can't even say it's a bad story. It was just badly directed or produced. Is it producer at actually times?
I think it's directed and edited, probably.
Aye, so I think it was badly directed, edited. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Mind you, well, it's got a few awards. It's got a lot of which I've never heard of. But it's got Academy. It's got the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films. It got a nominee for the Saturn Award for Best Blu-ray Release. Got nominated in 1981, so the year after it was released, for Best Supporting Actor and Best International Film. It won a special award in 2018. George C. Scott won a Best Actor at Fanta Festival in 82, so again quite closer. Whatever a Genie Award is, I'm not sure, or Genie Awards, I'm not sure what they are. A few of those as well. But I can see why when recommended it as a movie for this time of year, given the actor that played Albert.
Yeah, but it's
Eric Christmas.
It is a traditional ghostly Christmas.
Yeah.
movie.
The only actor that played him was called Eric Christmas.
Uh-huh.
I thought,
There you go. George C. Scott learned how to play the piece of classical
right.
music that he plays on a piano for college students. So he did
Wow.
learn it for the movie.
Wow. Excellent. There you go.
Uh-huh. Director Martin Scorsese included this movie in his top 11 scariest movies. Scariest horror films of all time list. I wouldn't even say this was a horror. It was a scary movie, but I don't think the genre would go down to horror. I think more psychological.
Yeah. I mean, yes, exactly. I mean, you got the psychological thriller rather than direct horror per se, but it's the sort of psychological thriller it is only reasonably recently, I think, come out as a if you pardon the expression, as a sort of subgenre of its own, hasn't it? Really, mostly it would have either been thrillers, or it would have been counted as an actual full-on horror.
There you go. Actors Tricia Van Devere and George C. Scott were married to each other in real life.
Really? Wow.
Publicity for this picture stated they had worked together several times in their then 8-year marriage. They had been together for 6 more movies, six movies, one for television and one a stage play. So maybe that's the fact is they weren't meant to be romantic, but because the two were married, just seemed as if it could have been just that. I took it as the screenwriter Diana Maddox and William Gray spent around 6 months doing research for this picture, which included copious newspaper articles on parapsychological encounters. Put my teeth back in.
Yeah.
Over 700 books and almost 2,000 case histories. How's that for research for your movie rather than just make it up like some of these ones like She-Hulk? Lawyers do this. Ho, your objection, Your Honour. That's not how you do it in court. But they did look at the amount of research they did just to get that. Yeah, I mean, numerous articles, over 700 books. They read over 700 books and almost 2,000 case histories just to do their screenplay. That is research. And then there you go as well. This movie is based on events which supposedly took place at Henry Treat Rogers Mansion in Denver, Colorado, while writer Russell Hunter was living there during the 1960s. The Cheesman Park neighborhood in the movie is a reference to the Cheesman Park in Denver, where the original haunting transpired. So they've taken that, they've done a lot of research and sort of mixed it and matched it to make it a bit more scary than the case story. But it just goes to show the amount of research and work they've put into doing a decent movie. And the only thing it failed them, it wasn't the screenplay, it was the editing. You know what I mean? But I can understand why they did the editing, because in the 70s and that, the longer the movie, they wouldn't have been told, oh, it's too long, you did it, because it would have been under 2 hours.
So that's half the length of Avatar then?
Yeah. But it was under 2 hours, so they were probably told, nobody's actually said, well, George C. Scott, you get that trimmed down. Yeah, right.
I'm presuming that it was a theatrical release rather than just a TV movie. Because TV movie would have been a lot shorter because of all the ads in there.
I'm trying to think.
There's nothing saying about it being a TV movie. So,
there's nothing there. There is a Japanese version of it. there is a Spanish filmmaker claimed it is in several interviews that is one of his all-time favorite horror movies. Up to the point, inspired several scenes from his couple of movies he's did, The Thesis and the others. In the featurette for the DVD release of the 1996 horror film Scream, actress Neve Campbell named The Changeling as the scariest film she had seen.
Wow.
The first two ghost story horror movies that veteran actor Melvyn Douglas made in a 2-year period right at the end of his film career. The other picture was Ghost Story. So it was the two. Melvyn Douglas made 2 in a year's period before he died. And that was that and Ghost Story in 1981.
Wow.
It's really this is just the stuff like I'm reading, because I hadn't read obviously things like this. The same year, co-star Trish was the main star in another haunted house movie, The Hearse. So it just goes to show, I mean, but you can understand why they got George Scott if she was actually doing some horror movies and she got him involved.
Resisting the temptation to do it to tell you where that word comes from. See, she resisting the temptation.
What word?
Hearse.
That's because he fell in her arse. Right, go
no.
on.
Serious, honestly, I think it's quite interesting and explanatory. It's a medieval word, and it's my understanding, and I could be but I found it a few years ago. But basically, when me and my mates used to line up to take out the French, we could only carry so many arrows. Basically, barrels and barrels of arrows, and they were brought up to the archery line on flatbed carts. Right? So you got flatbed carts, brought up barrels and barrels of arrows on. Right? When the battle's over, we pick up most of the arrows reusable. You're not going to need the arrows to take the carts, take the arrows back. So what you do is, that's what you put the wounded and the dead on.
Yes, I am aware of this.
Oh, right, okay. Oh, I'm over, yeah, but
no. Believe it or not, it's
I mean,
it's only us. It's actually here because remember, used to be a monumental mason. Used to make.
Oh yes, of course, yes, true, that's true, yeah. I was amazed when I found that out, that that obviously as time went on, we kept the use of the word for the vehicle that carries the dead, but it's no longer an ammunition carriage.
Yeah,
which may possibly also be connected to when you have and my brain just switched off on the word.
I think it's to do with the type of ammunition.
When you have a slate procession such as the Queen's, when you have it on a dead gun carriage, a catafalque it's called, and I'm wondering if that's a connection between that and that's a more upper status version of that you have it you have the coffin carried on a gun carriage in a state possession.
I see. I think it's to do with the fact is also the type of ammunition as well.
Yeah,
it's different ammunitions.
Well, yeah.
Well, see, the gun carriage was the gun carriage rather than the ammunition trailer.
Yeah,
but I think that was what it was. It was named slightly different because you look at Napoleonic, whatever. You've always got the horses pulling the gun, and then the gun has usually got the ammunition trolley strapped to the back of it.
I vaguely remember my Airfix models of Napoleonic era guns, horses, the lot.
Yeah. So I remember that.
Well, you know why a gun has a barrel, don't you?
Because it used to be a bell.
It used to be. It was made by a barrel maker.
Yeah.
Original barrels,
and they used bell metal for it.
Yep. But literally, it was metal that was made exactly the same way that a barrel or keg is made, which is why you see early cannons, they would have been 3 or 4 parts rather than bored out, and that's why they had the binding around them. Yep. So if they exploded, they tend to explode along the weak points. But I find that about the hearse particularly interesting, an example of the way language changes and the way a word can start having one and then end up with a seemingly completely different and absolutely unconnected meaning entirely, and yet there's a logical chain of why it's got that meaning.
But I think the logical chain is you think about it, you would have the barrels, or as you said, of the arrows being pulled on a hearse backwards and forwards, and after a battle the wounded would be on it. But as that part phased out, it would still be a case of bring up the hearse, we'll get
exactly. That's what I said.
Exactly. So they were still using the same vehicle which they used to use for that, but they stopped using it for carrying ammunition because of more mechanized and stuff like that. But it would still be the same trolley.
So I said, I mean, it's on the face of it, unless you follow the logic through, you would never make the connection between carrying a body at a funeral and bringing up barrels of arrows, of ammo.
Exactly.
But, I'm saying that's one I find, that's why I find it, which is why I get really, really annoyed when you get idiots these days.
Ready, aim, fire.
No, not that. No, I mean idiots these days who, for example, want to change the word history because it's got the word his in it, when it's an
people who want to actually change history. People who want to change history are nuts. Apart from anything else, changing words just because they're masculine or feminine are stupid. But changing the history because they don't like how history... Sorry, you can't change it. You might actually lie about it, but you can't change it. History has already happened.
Yeah. Oh, someone come up. I can't remember. I honestly can't remember who it was. We were talking about these things and about this, and someone said, "Okay, invent a time machine and send all these woke idiots back to Henry VIII or Alexander the Great and see how long they last."
I did see that.
So
I know we're drifting off this. But so
change something else
based on what you've heard. Is it a movie you would watch if it was cut down a bit more?
Yeah, I think I might get a chance. I mean, again, as I say, it might also have been that, especially since I've been rewatching things like Death in Paradise, which obviously short 1 hour, mysteries and the rest of it. That may also have been the fact, I'm not.
Yeah, I like watching Death in Paradise. The only problem is I usually get up to Adrian or O'Hanlon, whatever his name is.
O'Hanlon, yeah,
and then stop because I didn't like his character.
I was saying, I mean, I'm watching them. I
did watch it, but as soon as Ralph Little came in, I went out.
Well, it's funny. I was watching it, but I was saying on Wendy's Discord, I've got to think I might have missed some bits because I remember up to the point, and again, this is into the Ralph Little things. I remember up to the point where Florence gets shot.
Yes. In the barn or whatever it was.
Yeah, I did not remember the bit where where they get the internal affairs officer comes from France, and I generally don't understand exactly how they do that. I know the backstory is that Sam Marie changed from French to English to French to English to French. At the moment, it's English, which is why you've always got an English detective or Brit comes in. But in that case, why is a French internal affairs officer that comes in? But I didn't remember that, and I didn't remember the fact that she stayed for most of the next season as well.
Yeah. See, the thing is, I didn't like the Adrian
O'Hanlon.
I didn't like his character. I stuck with it because I liked the peripheral characters. But see, when Ralph Little's character came in, he was Jeremy phobic, and you're sitting there thinking, no, it's just too much. Well, they've done that. Funny when you saw Ben Miller coming in, still wearing the suit, But when they were going down the route of trying to emulate the fish out of water type, because with Chris Marshall, the fish out of water wasn't to do with where he was, it was just the way he worked.
Yeah.
It was the fish out of water. It had nothing to do with the fact is he was like Ben Miller's character, he was a fish out of water because he would not change his British ways. Staying that way. Whereas Chris Marshall changed because it was just the way he was a wee bit clumsy, so he would still do the silly things.
Yeah.
And then you had
Jack, just call him Jack.
Aye, Jack. I know. He came in, he was not like a fish out of water except the way he worked, because it looked like all the weirdos get pushed down there. But he was a fish out of water, still walking about with his rucksack and his stuff. Even though he was roasting, he wouldn't even take his. And you're sitting there thinking,
well, he's the Ardler Hammond character's thing wasn't so much a fish out of water. It was the fact that he was just recovering from that. He was still recovering from his wife passing away.
Yeah.
And
it wasn't a fish out of water. It was just the way he looked, the way he worked was different. He didn't say, no, I'm not getting involved. I'm still wearing the same one. Chris Marshall did the exact same thing. He didn't. It was a case of, no, this is how I dress and this is how we dress. And I would like a light cup of tea. But when they went, Ralph Little, it was almost a case of, remember Ben Miller will do
exactly. I mean, that's exactly what I was getting. There's a couple of things there I got me, especially. I mean, I'd only binge watched the last couple of 3 seasons. I think I didn't start right back from scratch. Because I did that. I think I did it a while ago. But I
love the Ben Miller ones. I always start there, even if I've actually got halfway through and I thought, I've not watched it for a while, I'll just rewatch it. I always go back to Ben Miller's.
Well, that's the character, and that's the character that's in the books that Robert Thorogood wrote. He only wrote about Richard Poole. But there was something. I mean, I suppose when you've got a program that's been going on for 12 years, and you've got a very particular setting set up, you're going to get a few things. But I thought, hold on a second. No, so I've seen almost this exact storyline with Richard and Camille. Camille.
That was Camille.
Camille.
Yep.
And they're doing exactly the same.
And that's the thing
at this point. And wait a minute, sorry, allergies and the rest of it. Yeah, the Ralph Little character is they're far too much trying to bring back exactly what made Richard Poole slightly exactly the same sort of things. And no,
but he's more annoying with it.
And now he's going to start falling in love with his DS, and
that's another thing as well. How come every single one of them start falling for? Yeah, I mean, it's almost like saying women and men can't work together.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
I could understand it with the first one because he was a fish out of water and she was.
Well, I mean, the thing was, it was the good thing with that was that if you were a cynic, or you sit back and you see the way they start sniping at each other at the end of that first episode, you go, okay, yep, we know how it is going to end, don't we?
Yes,
and it doesn't. But
the thing was, he gets killed.
Well, not only that, but it doesn't. But it seems more a case of Camille becomes more attracted to him than the other way round. I mean, it's a bit strange, but you can see that
you
bit
can
when
still
she
see the bits where he was attracted, but it was almost a case of because he was the superior officer, he couldn't go there.
Yeah,
and that was it.
Yeah.
And then there was a bit where later on where she has the dream she's sitting in the stand.
Well, I saw that again, and I think
I've got it on the channel. It was one of the ones from Death in Paradise. I didn't get a copyright strike when I tried to upload bits and pieces from it. That was the one.
Well, I loaded that when I saw that one, and I remember seeing it first, and I remember actually going, yes, when it turns around and when he's sitting there next, I was just shouting. Wondering, I rewatched that recently because that was season 10, and I rewatched that bit, and he's not shown. If you look on IMDb, he's not, because there's a very similar scene with them sitting on a beach back in season 1 or season 2. It's a very similar scene, but he's not shown as archive footage or anything there. But I think, looking at it closely, I think, because I thought, bloody hell, did they actually fly Ben Miller out there for one scene? I don't think they did.
I don't think they needed to.
Well, no,
because from the distance she's sitting on her Todd, then it zooms in, and she just leans back a bit, and then it's him there.
Yeah,
and
but
the two of them talking, and then it zooms back out again. She's sitting on her Todd, so it's almost like a case of he disappears. So they could have filmed that on any.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying. I think they did. Looking at it, watching it this time around, I got the impression I think that bit was green screened. The bit with Sarah Martins and Ben Miller was green screened. I think there's something about that looks to me that looks slightly different. The lighting looks slightly different. You know, sometimes how you can tell if something's been filmed inside on a set or being outside. There's something about that looks as if.
It's all to do with the shadows and stuff like that.
But there's something I can't actually define. I don't have the knowledge to have the language to define it. But there's something that made me think that's green screened. Or something similar.
Could have been, but I must admit, I liked that scene.
I did. I thought
it was the same as when Dwayne came back. I loved that.
Yes,
that was.
I thought he was in it but he's not in it. I thought he was in it for the next season, but he's not.
No, he was only in it.
He was only in it for the special. He was only in it for the Christmas special.
That's the only one I watched because he was in it. Danny John Jules was in it, so I watched it. I couldn't be asked with Ralph Little character, but Danny John Jules was in it.
I'm catching up. I think I've got. Because I haven't seen this year's Christmas special yet because I forgot it was going to be on. But I'm catching up with it.
Yeah. I've got all the DVDs sitting there right up until the Ralph Little. So I've even got Jack, shall we say.
Yeah.
I've got all his as well. I've got the DVDs. And as soon as Ralph Little, because I liked Ralph Little in 2 Pints of Lager. I thought he was hilarious in that.
But the thing is, he's the only person who's actually been in it before. He actually was. Ralph Little was actually a guest star in an earlier episode of it.
Aye.
The only person I think they've done that. They brought back obviously completely different character because these days people are more likely to notice. I think.
Yeah.
What was I thinking? There was a connection I noticed.
There probably was ones that have actually been in, but not. There've been side characters within murders and stuff like that. But it's one of those things. It's to me, you can have an actor playing different characters because they're actors. We don't think they're real. It's when they're actually. It's worse when you're trying to get different actors to play the same character. That's when it becomes jarring.
Oh, yeah, I think the problem I think these days is there's two things that are going on these days. There's binge watching, which means and there's also, especially in sort of in the genre in our sci-fi fantasy thing. Doctor Who is a prime example of it.
Colin Baker appeared, Peter Capaldi appeared.
And people, the sort of people that are cling to that are quite fanny for that sort of thing, are going to notice. And they're the sort of people, I mean, like when I was joking, he said earlier on, when I was half joking, he said that I reckon that Sarah Kingdom and Brett Vyman are obviously descendants of Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart because it makes sense. That's the sort of connection. Mind you, I'm seriously tempted then to wonder if Lethbridge Stewart, if by that definition, Lethbridge Stewart's mother or grandmother was a housemaid in London.
Yes,
upstairs, downstairs, flex again.
Yeah,
upstairs,
too far.
Yeah, yes, but no, but it's, you know what I'm saying is that's the sort of thing that some that in certain sorts of fandoms and certain films, people are going to notice, and they're going to think, okay, is there a connection there? Which nice if it pays off if they actually do make a nod to that. I mean, they even did make a nod in one of the in Torchwood, where there's one of the crossover talks. I think it must have been the one with Davros and the Daleks, Stolen Earth, where the Doctor asks Gwen if she had an ancestor who was a housemaid, because the actress plays the same actress who played maidservant in The Unquiet Dead.
It was the something lantern.
The Unquiet Dead, wasn't it?
Was it not the one, the Thingy Lantern?
No, it was The Unquiet Dead, wasn't it, with Dickens?
I thought it was maybe that's because I've only ever watched any of them once. I've never rewatched them again. I know what one you're talking about, but I thought it was something called something Lantern.
No, I think the Idiot's Lantern is the one about the TV, I think.
Yeah. But anyway, we'll start rounding off. My opinion on this one, I would give this probably a 6. Maybe even a 7, because the characters and the story were good. The only thing that let me down was the time. And that is it. Can't complain too much if it's only a case of where you could fast forward those wee clips, or put it onto double speed just to get past those, because there's no speaking, it's just filler. But I think a 7 is good. I know Wayne would give it a 10 because it's all-time favourite in that genre, maybe even a 9. But because of the last part where she says that the bit distracted from the main character storyline. That's the bit where the house goes in flames and and it's all to do with the Changeling. But it had to end with the Changeling, or else the Changeling would have meant nothing to the story.
Yeah.
If he could have resolved it without anything with the Changeling coming into it. But I think that's good. So what we're going to do, boys and girls, ladies and gents, lads and lassies, is thank you very much for joining us for our last live stream of the year. You get anything coming up, Colin? If I say, got anything coming up?
No, but I'm going to be turning into an elf on Friday, and I think you're going to be turning into a dwarf.
Yes, we have got Castles and Crusades Friday night, 11 p.m. UK time, 5 Pacific Standard, is it? PST, Pacific Standard Time. And other times around there. So join us for that on the Tabletop Junkies channel. That should be fun. I've got a new outro, so I'll fire that up. But until then, remember, I'm not old, I'm classic. Myself,
we don't see you before. Happy New Year if we don't see you before.
That's a good point. Happy New Year in 2023. I will be uploading something for Saturday. Don't know what it is yet, but Happy New Year's, boys and girls, and have a good one, a sober one. Have a great Hogmanay and a fantastic nerdy. But don't be too hungover. Until then, remember, I'm not old, I'm classic. Myself and Colin, out.
Good night.